Wait, first, you're last. You wanna follow me? God bless.
Oh my God.
All right, so we're gonna call to order the Tuesday, July 9 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Are we ready with the,
7 o'clock, they turn it on for you, so.
okay,
We should be on.
so we'll start by having the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. By the way, anybody who's got a cell phone like me, you need to silence the darn thing. Okay. So, we're calling the meeting to order. We had minutes from June 25th. I went through them. I didn't have any comments. Anybody else have comments? Okay. We accept them by consensus?
Yes.
Okay. We have no alternates needing to be seated tonight because we have the full complement of regular members. So now, public participation. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak on a subject which is not on the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to new business. And our first item is a discussion of the 2024 draft plan of conservation and development. And we'll welcome our consultant or consultants.
Just me.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Pat Gallagher, Principal with MP Planning Group. Thanks for having me back tonight. Really, the purpose of tonight is to go through all of the comments received during the public hearing and determine how we want to modify the plan as it reaches its final stages for adoption. So for ease, I have taken all of the comments that we received, both written and verbal testimony, and organize them by chapter, and that way we can kind of go through chapter by chapter and we can bring up the draft if we need. Many of these comments were editorial in nature, which makes them quite easy, we'll incorporate that change. Some comments, after kind of reviewing it, we've provided a consultant recommendation about why we don't think a change is necessary to the plan, and then there's a couple of items, including several of the items that were, took up a majority of the time at the public hearing that I think warrant some future discussion that I'm recommending we leave open to have some further discussion on that this evening.
So in the interest of time, sorry to interrupt you, but you have a number of these that are marked in green. They make change. And my suggestion is if we have a consensus, we just agree. I've gone through them.
100%.
If everybody's comfortable with them, we don't even have to discuss them. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, but.
Excellent. So we had one comment about survey results and having the total number of survey respondents on each chart. We will have that as a full appendix, so we'll include that in the final package, and that'll have the total number of survey results. Getting into some of our discussion items, starting with the Buckland periphery, or what we're calling the Buckland periphery in the draft plan. We heard at the public hearing, just to kind of summarize what we heard, is that there's desire by the property owner to have broader uses supported in the POCD. They have proposed two options in their testimony, the first of which is to reclassify the property as Buckland Gateway. Option 2 would leave the door open for other uses, not specifically named, but removing the prohibition of residential uses that is in the text in the draft plan. And then option 3 is another option that our consultant team came up with, which is trying to guide, should the commission be interested in leaving the door open for residential, providing some criteria that can guide your decision going forward in terms of the nature of residential development. I think one of the considerations for you all is to remember that this is a 10-year document, and we have obviously concerns with the school system and infrastructure, which kind of led us to the direction that we went in for the draft plan. But it's important to remember that issues may change over the 10-year horizon, and so for this site there may be a benefit to having some flexibility moving forward should those concerns be addressed, whether it's through a construction project, whether enrollment goes down. So I'm happy to kind of talk through any of these options, and if not, I will kind of throw it back to Steve to MC the discussion amongst the
Why
commission.
don't we go through all of the items quickly, and then we'll go back and discuss the big ones.
Okay. Golden Lampstand was another one where we received a number of comments. So we again have some recommendations here around maintaining some flexibility going forward, but also noting that this is a POCD, it's kind of a big picture generalized guidance document, not necessarily getting into the specifics of any individual site. Similarly for the Oakland Road site, that's one where much of the testimony was very site-specific, and we think there's elements in the plan that support further conversation around that. We have a couple of greens here. We had a comment about the boundaries of Sullivan Avenue being more clearly defined. Part of the reason why boundaries are a little bit fuzzy in the POCD is because it's not intended to be literally interpreted like a regulation. And so those were developed based on existing land use and zoning boundaries. And feel free to stop me as I'm going through these if we want to discuss any of the ones that we've highlighted in red. We have a comment about the primary sewer service district and just some wording changes that were suggested for clarification. We were recommending no change just to make sure that our language in the plan around sewer service is consistent with your minimum lot area requirements in your zoning regulations. That's why that one's red. We had a comment about having a stronger vision for what the town will look like in 10 years, as well as a housing vision. I know we had some good discussion around this as we went through the draft plan, and I think it's an important reminder both for you all and the public that this document is the vision, right? There's a lot of nuance and complexity to the document, and it's going to be hard to distill the plan down to a sentence. So I'd encourage folks who are looking for that vision to read specifically Chapter 3 of the plan, the vision chapter, and then look through the other ones for specific recommendations around our plan elements. We have a comment from the Open Space Task Force to be more specific about including a yearly budget item for open space funds. And I believe that they probably just didn't get to the section of the plan where that was referenced, where we do have an action around that on page 5-6. Comment number 20. It was actually, we can skip that one because that was more of a note rather than a comment. Question 22, or comment 22. There was a question from the DPW around any limiting factors to having the DPW site be in the rural residential future land use category should they look to intensify the uses there. And so we're proposing no change, but just kind of clarifying for the record that priority conservation area doesn't limit development on any properties within the rural residential area. It just means it's a general area where you want to prioritize open space acquisition should you have an opportunity. And then certainly going forward, should the DPW wish to intensify uses or add new uses to that site, that would need to go through the site plan process.
Now, did we eliminate the term priority conservation area, or was that only in the sewer plan where that was eliminated?
So for the sewer plan, we've replaced conservation area with sewer avoidance. We do in the open space vision note that rural residential areas are conservation priority areas, so that's where that terminology remains.
Thank you.
Recommending some changes to figure 314 that we heard at the meeting showing the Chapel Road bike path and that east-west greenway connection. Comment 27, the Open Space Task Force again had that comment around funds to purchase open space, which we do already have in the actions on 5-6. Comment 31, which was from one of the members of the Inland Wetlands Agency, Conservation Commission, around town role in siting, and again, that's no change because the town's role in siting is governed by state statutes, so not really much the town can do on that end other than that continued advocacy role. Page 35, again from the Inland Wetland Agency Conservation Commission, recommending that all all new housing should be required to have affordable housing to improve the town's ratio to avoid 8-30G trip points. So we're again recommending no change there, noting that you've already adopted inclusionary zoning as part of your regulations, so that's largely covered. Comment 37, suggesting median wage would be a better metric than average wage. Unfortunately, median data is not available. I agree, median's a better metric, but based on what we have, average is all we got. Comment 41 is another site-specific recommendation for a site in the town center. And again, site-specific, we think the plan has some language in here that supports further conversation around this individual site and looking at the zoning in the town center core, so we can get back to this one later to have a more detailed conversation.
Hey, just a, oh yeah, oh, we come back to that.
I
Comment
missed
40
what you said, Michelle.
No, when we go back to it, I'll make my comment.
Comment 45 is adding a possibility of a multi-use trail in the rail right-of-way to provide a pedestrian and bicycle connection from East Hartford to Sullivan Ave. We're recommending no change here, largely because we feel that it's the Walk and Wheelways group that should be spearheading those efforts, and we want to basically endorse that plan by incorporation rather than recommending new things that they have not gone through in their process. So certainly think it deserves future study, but not necessarily just a blanket recommendation as part of this plan. 46, in similar vein, a comment around the lack of mention of certain town resources, notably parks and recreation facilities. That's again one where we're recommending no change, simply because the town has a separate master plan for parks and recreation, which is incorporated by reference into the POCD. So again, as that plan gets modified over the 10-year period, we don't want to have recommendations that are in conflict with that going forward. 47 is actually one of the green ones that I think I will discuss on briefly. So one of the things that the DPW director noted in his review of the plan is that we have some recommendations around specific facilities and looking to make improvements to specific facilities, notably police station, the community center, and I believe one or two others. And the comment was that the condition ratings didn't necessarily indicate that there was an urgent need like there was for schools or for the Parks and Recreation Department. So for consistency, we think using kind of the half yellow, half red condition rating for those facilities that we specifically mentioned in the plan as in need of expansion or improvement would just kind of make that more consistent. Comment 50 about the long-term plan for making the town safe for bicyclists and pedestrians. Again, looking at all safe connections on all arterial roads and multi-use paths throughout the town. Again, we think this is a great vision, one that the Walk and Wheelways group aspired to achieve as part of their plan, but we're also looking at a 10-year planning horizon for the POCD. And so we had that conversation around how do we prioritize. So we have the sidewalk priorities plan, we have some specific guidance on bicycle recommendations that I think represent the 10-year priorities, knowing that, 20, 30, 40 years down the line, it would be great to achieve this vision. So again, no change for this plan, but certainly something that's worth studying further as the Walk and Wheelways group updates their document. Comment 51 was in support of through truck prohibitions and wanted other strategies to better direct truck traffic in town should the through truck prohibitions not move forward. I know there's been some conversation between the police department and the state. The state needs to approve the through truck prohibitions, and then the town ultimately has to enforce it. And this is one where we're recommending no change because we are referencing a range of solutions to deal with this issue. Obviously, through truck prohibitions being one, but also engineering, enforcement solutions, and education to go along with it. So we feel like the existing action under that item covers
Also
that specific approach.
what's the program, Net Zero or Zero?
Vision Zero.
Vision Zero, yeah.
52, similar to the other comment around transportation, looking at very specific items around speed limits. So again, we recommend no change. We do have some broader goals and actions that support traffic calming and reducing vehicle speeds, which we explicitly mention, without getting into specific speed limits on specific roadways.
And then I would just comment that actually municipalities are now allowed to set speed limits on state roads.
Okay.
With state approval of the speed limit.
I
State
don't
roads.
I was gonna say, they'd have to approve what you set, though.
say Sullivan Avenue.
You can request it, but they have to approve.
Set it at
You're
night.
not gonna knock it down to 25 miles an hour and get it passed. That's not gonna happen.
Will people go 25 miles an hour? Is the other. And the last batch of comments, a couple editorials, and then a couple of, I'll call comments that were more commentary than ones requiring action. So if you'd like, I can go back to the, unless folks want to have discussion on any of the red items that we went through. Or if there's consensus that those recommendations are appropriate.
So- You just went through a number of items that are highlighted in red. As you were doing that, I assume people were making a note of anything they were interested in discussing further. So I'll open the floor to members who might have something they want to discuss about one of the red items.
I do.
Okay?
Well, first of all, I'm in agreement with all the greens and all the reds with one exception. And this is a little bit of a nuance, but number 16. So what I took into consideration here was the commenter, and it's Merrick. And my only comment is I would be open to having him come back to better understand what he has in mind for this. It's really out of my respect for him and his
Your
unique
hearing's- Your hearing's
expertise.
closed, so you can't do that.
What's that?
Your hearing is closed, so you can't do that.
Okay.
Right?
Um,
I mean, you did hear him. I mean, is there anything that he said that you would have changed in the vision?
I frankly probably have to go back and look in the minutes and see if there's anything specific in there, but the minutes is just gonna be, brief.
Any other,
One comment on 51. So, I think, if you're not on social media at all, there's been a lot of noise in the last 2 weeks over Rye Street for Aldi's and the people with the trucks parking there overnight. So, I don't know if we can attack that issue because we didn't give it as a condition for approving that. Is there any way that we can add language either in this or our zoning regulations that if somebody is going to open a large shipping facility like that, or any facility where there's gonna be trucks in and out, that it becomes the property owner's responsibility or lessee to prohibit trucks from parking on town roads. Like, I don't know how much we can do about state roads, but that is bad. There was like 40 trucks, tractor trailers backed up, lined up on the road, and it essentially turns it into a one-lane road.
Bart's been talking about that for 2 years. Bart brought that up.
It comes and goes as a problem, to be honest with you, and it started back up again, but just to edify you quickly, you know, when we went through our moratorium on warehousing, we came up with a new set of regulations, and part of the new regulations is any of those kinds of uses will be by special exception. And when you have a special exception use, you can put conditions on it, and then we'll have some enforceability. Right now, all this sits out as of right use. But I will bring your concerns back up to traffic authority. It's been an ongoing issue. The police have been involved previously. It's ramped up again. We'll have to talk to police again about it, so, but.
I mean, we do have regulations governing the parking of mobile
Oh,
homes.
absolutely, and you can't, I mean, the traffic authority is gonna care that you're blocking a lane, so I mean, there's different ways you can go at it, it's just,
And Brian falls under that enforcement.
yeah, it.
I mean, it'll come down to signage and enforcement. I mean, there is no parking on Rice Street. I mean,
Yeah, and again, there had been some solutions where there were alternative locations for them to go, it's a matter of whether or not they can get into the facility when they show up. There's a lot of logistics that are around why the problem's there, but there needs to be some solutions, so. Just in the last week or two, I'm hearing again, it's gotten bad, so we'll follow up again.
Is there anything we can do in the plan of conservation and development to,
No, but I think you've done it in your zoning regulations, so with future developments, you'll have some opportunity to really put some conditions that at least we can have some zoning enforcement when things become a problem.
But yeah, I think, I mean, it's really best handled by the police department with sign, and they, as a traffic authority, they control the signs. So,
I'll go to one of their meetings.
but I'm glad you brought that up. Any other things you would like to discuss? I guess, I mean, it kind of bothers me that we're deferring a little too much to the Walk and Wheelways group. Number 50. I guess that one actually didn't defer to the Walk and Wheelways, but the ones where we did.
Well, they had one of them, I don't know which one it was, regarding along the railroad tracks.
Mhm.
I gotta go back to the number.
45.
We have no jurisdiction. When it comes to the railroad tracks, they can ask all they want. We don't own it, it's not a right of way, and it's not safe. So the answer to that is no.
Yeah, number 45, I agree with you. Number 50. I mean, I do think we should somehow say that every opportunity to have wider multi-use pathways on the major roads should be part of our plan.
I think is in the bicycle priorities plan
Mhm.
map, which shows the bicycle routes by street, and I can pull that up. Take a look.
Is that the sidewalk priorities plan, or is that?
No, that's different. So there's the sidewalk priorities plan. We also have the Vision Zero recommendation, which covers bicycle and pedestrian safety kind of on a global town-wide scale. And then we have the bicycle facilities plan,
Is that somewhere in chapter 7?
which is in chapter 7, yes. Let me pull it up here.
Here it is, bicycle infrastructure plan on 7/7, which
Yeah,
is
that's-
page 711.
Which shows potential bike routes on basically all arterial roads with the exception of Route 5. So I think this largely,
So I mean, I think the thing we run into is someone wants to build a business on Sullivan Avenue, and we say we want a wider pathway there, and the neighbors don't yet have a wider pathway, so, you know, we get into that kind of a path to nowhere comment, but I guess we're okay there. Any other red ones that people would like to comment on? All right, so that leaves us with the ones that are in yellow. So everyone's agreeable with all the changes, all the recommendations in the red. Okay. All right, so back to page 3 of this document. Because I'm interested in hearing what people have to say about the 3 options. I mean, I think one of the comments from the property owner was, oh, maybe we should just reclassify it as a Buckland Gateway. That would bring in all kinds of regulations, and I don't know if we do that in a plan of conservation and development or do that in zoning, but the other 2 options, I think we have the usual concern about residential uses. So, I don't know, I'll open the floor to people who have comments about these 3 options.
I'll make a comment on 9 and 10 if that's okay, together. This is a POCD. We're trying, it's almost it's a very thinly veiled attempt to change zoning indirectly via the POCD, which becomes the guiding document for any decisions that this committee makes.
Mhm.
So I would say, and I appreciate what Down East and Lamplight Golden Lampstand did, and what they put thought into it, but those 2 topics are better left for an application where we are gonna make a decision on zoning, not encumbered potentially by a POCD with language that locks us, not locks us in, but which
Oh, it does.
could be used technically against us.
But remember, every time we make a zoning change, we send it off to CROG, and they say, well, this is or is not consistent with your plan of conservation and development, so, I think we need to provide some guidance to
Well, I think,
us
I
as a
think
zoning organization.
the CROG review of our P O C D kind of speaks on behalf of what we presented, what the community as a whole, not us, but the community wants. And I'm with Mike on this, that this could get us in trouble. We take one application at a time. We don't change the rule book for developers, okay? Our rule book, our P O C D is based upon the community, not the people that come before us, okay? And that's, I believe wholeheartedly, that's what the community wants us to do. They came out for the survey. We had the workshops. The P O C D that we have in place, it didn't just happen overnight. This took time and groups. So 100% agreed. If you wanna bring something for us, we'll discuss it at the time. But we don't steer and change our 10-year plan based on
A single applicant.
an applicant. Okay, that's not what this is about.
Okay, but there is a large piece of land of 50 acres, that is languishing because it's zoned commercial, and
And that is the owner's problem. That is not the problem of the town of South Windsor. If you bought that land, okay, and if you wanna change the price of it or whatever you may do, but that is not our responsibility. We're not the landowners.
but what's our vision for that for that area of
What did
town?
the taxpayers ask us? What's that vision?
Well, that's one thing, but they also elected us to make decisions that are informed by our own, knowledge and deeper understanding, so.
And we also spoke with superintendent of schools, okay? So there's a lot that goes into our decisions when we write the P O C D. It's not steered by developers,
Okay,
okay? It's been decades that they've owned it. It's not our fault that it's not moving. We didn't bring COVID, we didn't change the way of the world. So
And we're not responsible, Kevin, for decisions that were made in 1994
that's what I'm saying,
about how that
100%.
property was used.
okay, so let's go on and see if there are other people who have a comment on that.
I do. I would opt, if the question on the table is which option is best, I would opt for option 2. I am against 1 for the reasons that were just articulated. The word reclassified to me says zone change. And I think there has to be a compelling reason to do a zone change, and a zone change to me is out of the purview of what this document is. And 3 feels like it would force us into a corner of making a lot of decisions quickly, where 2 feels like it opens the door for this area to do some things other than what it is currently designed to do, but doesn't put pressure on us. And to finish it up, these things should be addressed by way of an application that comes before us, where then we can just focus on it, discuss it, and make decisions.
So one of the things in option 2 is to strike the residential and mixed use not envisioned,
at this time.
at this time, yeah, that's being stricken.
Right.
So does that change what the Buckland periphery definition is? If you remove that from what the definition of the Buckland periphery area is, you have now essentially inserted residential use and mixed-use development are envisioned for this area at this time.
No, I disagree. I think that it's almost like a meaningless sentence, the way it's currently written. It's not envisioned at this time. It doesn't say that we're banning it. It doesn't say that we're endorsing it. I think if we just eliminate that sentence, it's still our decision each time whether or not we're gonna allow it. This doesn't ban it. The way this is written right now does not
But this
forbid.
opens Pandora's box. This allows it.
But even the way it's written right now, it still allows it. All it says is at this time, as of as of July 2024, we weren't thinking about it, but heck, this is September of 2024, so that's not at this time. I think the sentence is confusing more than anything. I think eliminating that sentence
Catchy.
doesn't do anything.
It
So I
doesn't
would just
paint us in
point- I
a
would
corner
point
to
out-
do anything.
I would point out that option 2 has quotations,
Yep.
so the whole thing there is literally what's in the current draft,
Right, except you're taking out that last
except for
sentence.
taking out that sentence.
Right.
And you're adding in other uses into it.
Can be considered.
I mean, I
It's
get-
not
Yeah,
mandating that
and,
they have
and
to go
honestly,
in.
it doesn't say what the other uses are, so it really
Exactly.
does open up the door for, something we haven't thought of yet.
I mean, I still see that property as being walled off by decisions that were made by the landowner of both properties.
But
The
it's only one,
Manchester
it's only
side.
one landowner though, so the landowner
Right,
has control of
right.
both properties.
So,
Can
I have trouble opening up to too many uses, but, I think we can live with option 2. I would personally, I guess I'd be happy with deleting that sentence. Let's talk about option 3. What's wrong with option 3?
Before we run
Mike-
off,
Mike
before we
wasn't
run
done
off
with
with
two.
option 2,
Well, actually, no, we were talking with
Oh.
Commissioner Bernstein.
Commissioner
And
Bernstein.
then,
Around. Those are all my comments.
I don't know, Alan, you have any?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm stuck between option 1 and 2. I don't like 3 because it pigeonholes us into like a corner. I don't believe that's, I guess, our good best use of time. I agree with the comments of Commissioner Roulette and Commissioner Foley. I mean, I think that we should keep an open mind to what that plot of land could be. But at the same time, like that's the language that we've had for the past 10 years. And I think the reason why it's crossed off now is because I don't think that the body or our commission sort of envisioning ourselves of sort of saying, again, the past 10 years, it's saying that we're not envisioning it at this time. And I think the reason why it's getting crossed off now is we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into a corner of saying, well, just because that line is in there, we can't do it. Now, that's sort of where I, again, fall between option 1 and 2. Because again, if, let's say, a couple years from now, we find ourselves in hard times financially, let's say through the state, federal, whatever, right? And there's finally movement on that piece of property. We may be in different times, maybe a bit more desperate to do something with that. I agree it's not our prerogative to develop it because the owner would like to sit on it, but at the same time, if it means, let's say, reclassifying it down the line, I think if we just do option 2 and ignore option 1, then it becomes a bit harder to do anything with that piece of property. And it seems now is the time more than ever if they want to do something with it. So again, that's why I said a mix between option 1 and 2. I'm not sure if that's possible because option 2 is, again, what's there already, but option 1 is reclassifying it. So I would like somewhat of an ambitious idea where we're not, putting ourselves in a corner. But again, I feel like that's what option 2 is already.
I mean, okay. Commissioner Terry?
Well, I was looking, if we did option 1 and just reclassified as Buckland Gateway, that says there may be some limited opportunities for housing in a mixed-use setting, which is even more open than if we just pull that one sentence out of option 2. I just believe, I don't like the sentence in option 2 as it is. I like the rest of the Buckland periphery, the way it's defined, but I would just get rid of that last sentence because I think it backs us into a corner of confusion that we don't need.
I don't
Commissioner
think,
Dexter?
I'm
Wait a minute.
not, I'm next.
No, you've already spoken, so does.
I can't add much more except to say I like option 2. I don't know how, I've been looking at that last sentence and saying, how can we say something differently but mean the same thing? Because I think it's important, whether it's now or 10 years from now, that we had a vision for this property that due to current circumstances, I don't know, I'm just spouting off right now, but if I just had to pick one, it would be option 2. I don't know how else to say
Can I ask a question?
Let me just also comment. I guess I agree with the comment that this isn't gonna work as a commercial area. Just due to either the way they've designed the Manchester side or because although it's close to the interstate, it really isn't gonna generate retail. It's just not the kind of place where you drive by on Pleasant Valley Road and say, oh, I'm gonna go shop at the whatever store there is in there. I just don't think it works commercially. So I do think we have to have some kind of a slightly or somewhat expanded vision for what that property could become without necessarily turning it into, several hundred housing units, which I think is also a problem. I
Is
like the idea of kind of the language we already have. Mixed, getting a little too strong about the mixed use is the idea that the commercial has to be built before I think option 3 just too complicated. So I'd personally go with option 2. I wouldn't have a problem with option 1, except I'd wanna have some language in there that, it can't be another evergreen walk. It will never work as another evergreen walk, okay? So that's what the envision is, but, I don't know. What happens to it if we make it Buckland Gateway?
You introduce apartments that you would have to do a text amendment at a 2-to-1 ratio.
Mhm.
Like your other apartments, you introduce independent living, you have assisted livings already in the design commercial zone.
So I think, option 1 sounds simple, but does it really work?
Well, the only thing about the Buckland Gateway Zone right now, it's specific to Buckland Road, so a lot of the setbacks and things like that are gonna be not work on this property, right? So, years ago, Buckland Gateway concept was tried to be put on this property, and the owner at the time didn't want it. So,
Oh, that's interesting.
today, some changes were made to regulations. When we wrote the regulations, there were some slight changes to the design commercial zone, but nothing of any significance. So this is the first time it's ever really had any serious look at from.
So, okay, Commissioner Foley, I cut you off before.
Yep.
Mhm.
Well, we're not real estate agents here, okay? It is not our we don't own that land, okay? We're not responsible for it. The town, we have a fiduciary responsibility, like Alan had said, if we fall on hard times, that's not our problem. If this developer, this landowner falls on hard times, nobody cares about Kevin Foley if I fall on hard times. Or Steve Wagner, Mike Goulet, nobody cares about what we fall on. They bought the property, okay? They knew what it was when they bought it. They developed around it, okay? I can't get any more clear the fact that they were the landowners that did what they did to this land, okay? It is not our responsibility to sell that for them. The fiduciary responsibility that we have, which is not our purview, but when the superintendent of schools speaks to us and tells us the problems we have, we need to listen to that. This is not our job to make this fit something. We need to listen. We took the time to do a POCD. Whether it's 10 years from now, it changes again, but right now, it's not our problem.
So what's your vision for this section of town?
You know what? If they find a way to cut a road behind that plaza, I've driven it. It's their problem, okay? They can create their own, maybe it's a professional outlet, just like they have in East Windsor and Windsor, these beautiful medical facilities. I don't know, but it's not my job. They bought the land. We will look at their application when it comes before us.
Can I ask my question?
Well,
Well,
let's
Mike's
go to Mike. I think he was the next one to want to.
Sorry.
No problem. So, remove a couple of things. I'm gonna start following up on Kevin's point. If I look at Evergreen, look at the changes that they made to the layout of their own property. They tore 2 buildings down, they restructured the roadways, they accommodated moving Sakura, they took care of their tenants and modified their property in a way that increased the value, and it's all commercial. It's up to the applicant
Well,
to
it's also residential. It's a type of commercial, yes.
Understood, but I'm talking about the commercial aspect of what they did with Whole Foods and Secure and they moved stores around, tore something out, rerouted everything, and they made it work. They have an opportunity to, nothing is preventing them from coming to us and saying, hey, we're gonna knock down 3 stores in the middle of our mall and make it more open so it'll be like Evergreen Walk, but run the commercial back through the buildings that they knocked down. That is all within their purview and control, and it complies with the zoning regulations as they exist today. First point. Second point is, if I was gonna change any sentence or anything in here, I would just get rid of "at this time." It's a commercial zone, and commercial zones are not intended for residential use. If they want to apply for a modification or a variance, they can do that. They can come to us and ask for that. It is a commercial zone. Anything we do here, potentially, even though it's just for this theoretically one property that's commercial, anybody else that owns commercial property can come in and say, you did it for them, you changed your language, and now I'm gonna apply, and I have the right to essentially put it in your POCD, your long-term vision is this could be used for residential, so I'm gonna apply to build residential. We are at capacity. There's no vacancy sign is out on our school system. We can't put more people in our school system, and Alan, thank you so much for saying before, like, if we ever run into a problem as a town because our budgets are shot, we're overspending, this is the worst thing that we could do to our budgets, is add 649 units that will have probably 1,200 students. Because that's what's coming out of every new development that's come in this town, is not 1 kid per house or a half a kid, it's 2 kids per house, 2.3 or whatever the number was. That would be my modification, would be get rid of "at this time" and leave it the statement as it is.
Okay, so if we, I'll go ahead,
Paul had his question.
Paul.
So first of all, Kevin, if you fall in hard times, I do care.
I care too.
That's so nice.
Thanks for coming in today, Paul.
So this is a POCD. If we, for instance, were to adopt the language in option 2 for the POCD, what does that, if anything, lock us into?
Good question.
We still have a zoning application that has to come in to implement.
Yeah, right? It doesn't lock us into anything or not lock us in.
But it gets us into a lawsuit.
How so?
Conflict with the POCD.
A what? A conflict?
You end up with a conflict between the POCD and the application. Or our rule, our judgment.
So there is a sentence in there, due to its location proximate to the interstate highway system and the Buckland Hills area of Manchester, this area is anticipated to support regional-oriented business, retail service, and other uses to complement the offerings in the Buckland Road corridor.
The "and other uses" is their red line, though. That's their
Suppose we
modification.
change the last sentence to just say residential uses only are not envisioned for this area.
Just take out residential uses, period, like,
Okay, so how do we feel if, let's say that they came in with a senior housing, because we do need, I mean, we really have a senior housing issue. So
Let
maybe
them
we
bring
need to
an
say residential uses that, need to be weighed against the capacity of the town's infrastructure, to absorb them, something like that. But, so someone could come in, they or future owner or whatever could come in and say, all right, I wanna build some 55 and over housing in with some medical offices.
they could come in at that time with an application, but not in our POCD. Let them come with an application, Steve.
Okay, but now
We have changed the rules on, how many times have we changed?
Wait. If we leave in there that residential uses are not envisioned, then that really weighs strongly against allowing senior housing in that area.
No, but if you put in residential uses only are not envisioned for this area at this time. In other words, you can't come in with just a residential project. You
That
need
leads
to
you
make
missing.
POCDs can change within a 10-year timeframe. I mean, maybe you wanna just, if you feel that concern, maybe you wanna go with more conservative language, and in 5 years from now, if the environment's changed, someone can come in and request to modify your POCD. We've had that happen, if you recall, right after our first POCD 10 years ago.
Yeah,
We
when we
came
modified
in
it.
and had the Route 5 North overlay zone modified almost immediately. So, I mean, if you're concerned about the whole, putting something in there right now that's a 10-year commitment, that is something that might satisfy the people that wanna have it still in their potential. I don't know. Just trying to move it forward a little bit.
There is a reason that Down East wants this language changed here, and they're trying to front run bringing an application forth. I believe the language should stay as it is. If they wanna bring an application, bring it, we'll consider it with an open mind, not encumbered by any modifications in language, and we'll make a decision based on the application. If they come and say they wanna put a 400-hole mini golf course in there, we'll consider it. That is an application. They're trying to front run an application by getting us the change language in a POCD to align with what they want. We're not here again, to Kevin's point, we're not here to represent Down East's interests, we're here to represent the residents and citizens of the town.
Okay, but let me speak for the citizens, even though, we took surveys and everything. I think the citizens are also have an interest in seeing this land being used for something that generates taxes. That's a citizen's interest. We have a big concern that we not raise the school population dramatically or even modestly, okay? But I think, leaving that land idle generates zero taxes, finding a way.
No, it
to
generates
make-
taxes now as it is.
Excuse me,
It generates
excuse
taxes
me,
as it
I'm
is.
speaking,
It generates taxes as it does right now.
excuse me, I'm speaking, I have the floor.
Speak. Cut me off before.
Right, I think a vision that is a little bit broader for this property is more likely to generate a tax, a substantial tax base that isn't just based on vacant land. So I don't like the idea of putting in generalized affordable housing, for example, because it generates school children. And it's not something we can absorb right now. On the other hand, a use that is residential but does not generate school children would be a fine use of that property. And given that it's not directly visible as you come off the highway, I think that might be an easier project for anybody to build there. I'm not advocating for this company, I don't, it's not their thing, it's what do we need as a town to happen to one of the largest pieces of undeveloped land in the town. And I think something that allows, we have a crying need, I don't know, maybe none of you are old enough to be looking at where you're gonna go when you move out of your big 4-bedroom house, but there's a lot of people who go to look in South Windsor, and Michelle can testify to this, someplace to live, and basically you have to move out of town when you move out of that 4-bedroom house, because there just isn't enough senior housing in this town. So I think something that doesn't, if you say residential uses are not envisioned at this time, you're basically saying someone comes in with a zoning application with residential uses, and we're gonna have to say, sorry, that's not consistent with our plan of conservation development. Other kinds of residential uses can have low impact on many of our resources, and one of them would be senior housing.
I think there are projects out there. I was so happy to hear about Carla's Pasta being repurposed with, Home Market Foods. What a great space for them and a great tax opportunity for the town. And I know there are other companies out there looking for a home. I know this, they're gonna still add on, so it's not like they're starting from scratch, but they're out there. The other thing is, if we looked at some of the other comments from the public hearing, I think there are senior developments queued up there. Some people want us to have more square feet, you know, we're gonna talk about that at some point. So, Steve, you're gonna find a place. I know there's gonna be a place, and they're out there. I think they're getting ready to come talk to us, so, maybe that'll satisfy the
So I
need.
mean, what's the concern about residential uses, to be honest?
To me?
Yeah.
Schools.
Okay, so what's the concern about residential uses that don't impact the schools?
I don't know if they do, to be honest with you. I don't know if they do. You
I
can-
think we know,
No.
Michelle, that
Yeah,
senior housing,
yeah,
does it generate students?
yeah.
No, but, you know, you
That's
have to
nice.
recognize that they sometimes vacate a four-bedroom house and that generates the students. So I mean, you know, I don't wanna, you know, just say senior housing doesn't have any impact, cause I really don't know that. But the reality is people move out of larger homes to move into the units and those are now available, so. But I will tell you, I get many phone calls from people looking for places to be able to move to, that they wanna sell that four-bedroom house. So is there a need? Yes, there's a need. And I think there's a need for a variety of senior housing, not just an SRD or, you know, an independent living. I think there's apartments. I think the need is wide
So-
in range.
So why can't we just change the last sentence to say the only residential we're looking to add, or if we were, would be senior housing? That's it. I don't have a problem with that. We're open-minded, we're allowing something. And maybe 10 years from now, maybe the school issue is addressed and we could come back to it in 10 years.
Or 5 years?
Or 5 years, yeah.
Exactly. And to go on the other comment, I mean, yes, we're a zoning commission, but we're the planning and zoning commission. So we're also planning for long-term problems that could impact this town. Again, like the school impact issue, for example. So that's why I'm talking about like planning for things that could happen. So I just wanted to make that comment as well. So that's really my only thing. 'Cause I mean, the last sentence is there for a reason, but we could still amend it to accommodate for senior housing.
So at this point, I think we've all had our, okay, Paul?
Question for Michelle. Are you familiar with any situation where a lawsuit came out of a case because there was an inconsistency in the vision of the plan of conservation and development and something that an applicant wanted to do? Are you familiar with any?
I'm not familiar, no. I mean,
I-
could research it and probably, you know, I wouldn't wanna say there
I-
isn't any.
As the lone person here with a law degree, I would be curious if we were to open the door with language that
It's a
makes.
guiding document, it's not a rule.
It's a guiding document that makes residential in some way, shape, or form available. Do you think that there's a liability there? This is vision.
We could still turn it down for the impact on schools. We could still turn it down for impact on traffic. We could still turn it down for a number of reasons. Just because it says we would consider it in here doesn't mean that we're handcuffed, and because you came in and said you want to build 600 units in here, we have to take it.
It's
There's
not a
every other
regulation.
reason we use now to turn down applications. Taking that out at least opens the door for somebody to come in with a project that incorporates something like that, that doesn't have an impact on school because it's all senior housing, or you're forbidden from having anybody under 20 living in a house. I mean, whatever. We're not doing anything to ourselves if we take that sentence out. All we're doing is allowing people to be a little bit more creative when they come to us, but it doesn't handcuff us to do anything we don't wanna do.
Okay, so I
That's my
think
2 cents.
we need to make a decision on how we're going to deal with this particular section. At the end, we're gonna vote on the whole plan, but I'd like to have a decision on, you know, how we're gonna address this section of the plan of conservation and development. Someone would like to make a motion,
I'll make a motion that we adopt option 2 as written.
I second it.
okay?
Comment, a question,
Mhm.
with that sentence taken out?
That's what,
As
That's
written.
what option 2 is.
So don't add in senior or anything, just as it's written?
As written.
All right, I like that.
Okay.
Option C.
So, and other uses is new though.
Oh, and
Correct.
other
Yeah.
uses.
And
That's
other
okay.
uses.
So
That's
that you're okay leaving that
Mhm.
as is?
okay, any other discussion?
We need to keep our commercial base. Like, I don't understand what we're doing here, but Mike had an idea, and I don't wanna keep beating this horse, but if the owner of this property reconfigures as they did in Evergreen Walk for their commercial purposes, they can reconfigure this as well. Everything has an impact on our human resources. It doesn't, housing is housing in general. The taxes generated by residential properties compared to that of commercial, it's a fiduciary responsibility. They're the ones that took this on. They bought this for this purpose, for commercial. They knew what they purchased. In commercial land is, that tax base is what we will survive by, and I'm telling you right now, we cannot continue to just, say we bring in a senior resident component to this project. Well, then, now, our senior center, is that gonna be big enough? Okay, do we need to get 2 more buses to accommodate? This is a viable piece of commercial property that planned well, and let them envision their own future, not ours, okay? Let them figure it out for themselves, and we'll take a look at their print and their plan, and we'll look at it.
Okay, any other comments before we vote?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I do want to just make sure that we do have the residential densities plan map also, which each future land use policy area has a residential densities category. So under option 2, I would recommend that we classify that property as requires further study. So keeping it ambiguous, similar to the text for option 2.
So what page is that?
So that is figure 3, or page 3-8, figure 3-2. Right now it is non-residential, in accordance with the text in the draft plan.
A new color.
So this would be a new plan, or new category, requires further study. Just to be consistent with that proposed language under option 2.
Okay, so that's the gray area right there by Wheeler Road.
Correct.
That would be part of this change.
Okay. Are you made the motion, are you willing to accept that change?
Let me show you.
Yeah,
So right now it says non-residential area, so we change that to be requires further study, so it's not committed with a residential density.
my approach to this is to go as non-committal as possible,
that
so,
would be that.
so, yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, and you seconded it?
Yeah,
Alan?
good.
Or Bob? Okay.
Yep.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll take a roll call.
Do you want me to do it? Commissioner Olet,
No?
Dexter,
No.
Wagner,
Yes.
Foley,
No.
Fatiri,
Yes.
Kevin, no?
Yep.
And Bernstein.
Aye.
So, the motion is approved, 4-3.
And can we just say one last time what we just approved? Option 2 with what?
The language that's in your text right there, so the language that's bolded is the only new language and the strikeout at the bottom.
With the
Gotcha.
strikeouts
Okay,
and the
thank you.
insertion.
And then the map,
Density map will reflect a further study
Okay.
needed.
thank you.
All right, so now we get to move on to page 4 of the comments. Open the floor to discussion on that one.
Well,
We'll give everybody a chance to just read this over again. I read it a week ago, but okay, any comments? Commissioner Foley?
Again, I will say, you buy your land, you know what you have for services. We met with the Water Pollution Control Authority, we did our homework, okay? You know it better than anybody. You You buy your land, you know what you have for services. It is not the town's responsibility to accommodate or to bring services to you. You know what you have, and that's what you build upon. Okay? Thank you.
How do you feel about the consultant recommendation? You're saying just don't do anything, leave it the way it is.
Leave it the way, what we have is what we have.
Okay.
Again, I can smell the sewer treatment plant, but I can't use it,
Got it.
okay? It's right down the street from me. I don't call the town hall and go, hey man, I'm right down the road. Can you please bring that to me? No, I know what I bought. It's the end of the story.
Okay. I just wanted to understand.
Should we just?
Well, no, I just wanted to make a comment that, similar to the last discussion, this is not the place to talk about a zone change. So from residential rural to residential low density, that shouldn't be part of
No.
our discussion tonight. So
Absolutely. Go ahead.
taking that off the table, perhaps, we really are left with a piece of land that has permitted use of a place of worship. And I think that the change in zone is to allow for these houses to be on there.
Or text amendment, it could be in the
Or
form of
text
a
amendment,
text amendment,
okay.
you allow something different.
So at the
But
time-
some change of some regulation, correct.
So at the time of the application, that would be the time to discuss all that, I would guess, correct?
As
Yes.
far as the
Okay.
specifics of a
Because that's
project.
kind of like how I like to, look at these things.
So,
Go ahead, Paul.
so when I first read this and reread it, my feeling is to go with the consultant recommendations. Does that mean it would be gray? Because you're saying it needs further study?
Yeah, I mean, there may have been some confusion over the POCD and its role, right? The POCD is a guidance document. It's not the authoritative decider of a future development. And we had a process for delineating the categories, especially the difference between rural residential and low density residential, which was existing zoning and do you have sewer or not. And this parcel follows the same, or has the same characteristics of all other rural residential properties. And, their vision, certainly warrants future discussion, but it's so site-specific that our recommendation is to have those conversations, as Commissioner Dexter said, as part of a land use application. And, if a site is in the rural residential zone, it doesn't mean that it's, if it's under a certain context or certain location, that you can't ever change it ever, right? That's not the intent of the POCD. There's always gonna be some nuance that you all are going to have to use as you interpret the document that says, okay, this is the general policy, this is the location, here's how far we are from sewer, and consider the application on its merits. So I just wanted to make sure that it was kind of clear of, what the POCD is. We're not getting site-specific on any area other than some larger blocks that are contiguous zones. And certainly, having some flexibility in those edge cases where you may border a neighboring town sewer system, may have some merit as well if it's not leading to broader land use changes within the in the policy area.
So just so everyone knows, would you go back, Michelle, and tell us, what do they have by right on that property? What can they do? They can build a church there for sure.
Well, the history of the property is in 2006, a church was proposed and approved at that time.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was a WPCA approval that was gonna allow them to negotiate with MDC to bring the sewer up to the church. I think in 2019, any approvals on that property are now lapsed because of all the timeframes associated with nothing went into construction, nothing was ever finalized. So basically, they have a raw piece of property right now that would need to come back through any approval process for anything.
In terms of, let's say they wanted to build I'll call it a church, a religious facility plus some housing.
You would need some changes to your text language, to your language either.
Can they put any housing in there at all? I mean, if
A
this were just,
parsonage, usually, sometimes the church comes along with a parsonage, so a single-family house, we've.
but I mean, let's say this was not a church group, it was just somebody who owned the property and they wanted to put some housing there. How much housing can you
You
put?
would have to subdivide it, so in other words, it's what, 9 or however many acres, you'd have to be able to meet the RR regulations for subdivision to create more than one unit.
So it is possible to put some housing on that site, just not Just
sure,
a
as a
limited
right
amount.
housing, sure. I mean, I don't know how many units, they'd have to be frontage lots
Sure,
on a
there's all
public
kinds of
road
rules
or
about how much,
interior
but,
lots, but
yeah.
you're not gonna get to 12
Mm.
on 9 acres, cause it's 1 acre zoning out there, and you're not gonna be able to get, there's some areas that aren't buildable towards the rear of it, so, I mean, someone would have to look at it as to how many units you could potentially get, but again, those units would have to meet your rural residential zoning classification of on a public road, certain amount of frontage, depth, that kind of thing. Or a text amendment where you know, you carve out a special exception that allows certain things based on maybe a religious, you know, I mean, that would be another route someone could try to pursue. You think of your special exception uses you have in your residential zones, they kind of carve out by special exception certain kinds of uses. So that would be another approach one could consider.
So let's just, without actually having a vote, are we all pretty happy with the first bullet and the consultant recommendation? Anybody who's not happy with that?
What, maintain existing?
Yeah,
Future land use?
okay, what about the second bullet? I mean, what that would say, you know, we have in other areas what's called limited sewer use. WPCA could come in and designate it as limited, which means they could put sewers for 200 feet, I think, from the MDC line that apparently comes up close to them, but, anybody have a problem with the second bullet? So do we have a consensus on the consultant recommendations here? Are there specific wording changes you need to make?
So it would only be adding some language for the second part of the right path.
Correct. And it would just be generalized, it would be the site specific, so.
I mean, I think we're hoping to come to a vote on the whole plan, so I wanna make sure we have all the language that we're voting on somehow
Well, we won't,
reasonably well known.
we won't be able to vote on the whole plan if we're gonna have further discussion, like, unless we're doing it tonight.
Tonight.
Correct? So, yeah,
Well,
so,
I don't know what you mean by further discussion.
That's what we're doing now, right? We're discussing it.
well, after this is done, are we going back to this again as far as?
In another meeting?
I don't think so.
In another meeting?
Yes.
No.
No, I don't think so. I
Well,
think
we're
we,
hoping to
So what I take from what being recommended is we're gonna keep the densities like we are. We're gonna suggest the sewer, plan section says a statement in there that, on a limited connections to neighboring sewers would be considered on a case-by-case basis. We're not being specific as to what properties we're talking about. So
There
it
would be
gives,
no change to the map,
and there'd be no change to the map. And
To the
then,
su- to the
to the,
sewer map.
correct.
Okay.
either
and
map,
to the
any
last
map.
comment, and to the last comment here, again, that's just that, you know, for something to move forward on any piece of property where they wanna do different densities or different uses, it's either a zone change or a text amendment that needs to go forward, or in a situation where the zone doesn't exist, you gotta create it. So, I mean,
So the last paragraph basically puts it off to, do we wanna do a zone change? That would be where we would have that discussion.
you know, that's when the applicant comes in and then you have a public hearing and the neighbors that have concerns can come out and express their concerns and the
I'm fine
applicant
with
can
that.
evince your, you know. So that's, I think,
That's fine.
a fair way to treat this
Yeah.
particular.
No, good.
Pretty happy with where that is, okay.
Yep.
On page 5.
Alright, so, this is another one, just as a little bit of a back property where they wanna do, housing development that may not necessarily be in the existing zoning regulations. This property is a little bit unique in that it's split between two future land use categories. Not uncommon, the lines have to get drawn somewhere. And it's partially in the medium density category, which envisions a wider range of housing types on arterial roads than the other zones or the other policy areas in the map. And so again, we feel like this is a site-specific comment about senior residence developments that we feel is the plan already has language in it that talks about considering other housing types on sites in the medium density area that are on arterial roads, which this site fits those criteria. So again, we think that a zone change application or a special exception application is the right time to have those conversations around density, zone changes and the like.
Or zone taxes.
Or
Yeah,
zone taxes,
Yeah,
yep.
so tax amendments.
All right, any comments from our team here? Are we all pretty happy with the consultant's recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, my comment was it works for me, but what bubbled up for me is the concern about schools. And I don't know what to do about that, but it's a concern.
The more that, I guess that we could hope that the applicant comes in for more senior SRDs, then
Seemed to be the indication that was really
But
verbalized.
anything like that would be kind of aimed at a single property, which I don't think we want to do here.
correct,
Yeah, and I
so
think
we can't.
how it is.
All right, page 8, there's a,
Steve, if I may, I guess this is for Michelle. When we say senior housing, is that the same as 55 and over?
pretty much.
In our
Are they?
Age restricted somehow. Some-
But there's
some
also
do 60.
restrictions.
55 is young today,
Yeah,
guys.
but it's restrictions on the the younger age of the occupant. So if you're 55 and your spouse is 45, you can move into this housing,
Right,
but can you bring a 16-year-old into that house? And that would generally not be allowed.
That's true.
generally not be allowed.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
But we all agree that quote-unquote senior housing, there could be children. There could be school-aged children. It's
I can
possible.
say in
Yeah,
South Windsor, we
turnover.
don't have any, so if
That's a slope.
we're
Alright.
use our own experience to guide us, we don't have any that I'm
You
Because
aware
of
of.
the restrictions.
Grandma and grandpa are taking care of the kids these days.
Because of the restrictions, it's not happening, right?
All right,
I mean, are there one or
Sorry.
two cases? Maybe, but it's not generating 20 students or 50 students.
okay. Thank you.
All right, now back to comment 41.
This again is another site-specific comment, this one around the center core, zoning regulations of property that's fronting, I believe it's Ellington Road?
And Community Road as well.
And Community Road as well, and looking at potential changes to both uses and dimensional requirements in the zone, with again, some pretty specific recommendations. We feel that the POCD already has 2 action items under Objective A on page 6-8 that support further discussion and evolution of that town center core zone, including looking at new permitted uses in light of market conditions, which was the second bullet, and then exploring density bonuses for redevelopments, which is the last bullet. So we feel that there's some support for further discussion on this option already in the plan, so we're not recommending a change. And again, the specific details could be part of a future application for further discussion.
I think for those of you who weren't around when we defined the overlay zone, the whole idea was sort of a Blueback Square design with bicycle paths and housing above stores, and I think that vision just isn't working as a market in Connecticut. Okay, so that area does need to be revisited with the zoning. I think some kind of a zoning change. Some developer will need to come in and say, this is the way it really ought to be.
And, you know, quite frankly, for the person who talks to most people, we've always had that discussion with anybody looking at it, you know, tell us how it does or doesn't work and let's talk about it. So I think that, you know, you haven't seen anything come forward yet because it really hasn't been the right time yet, but I think, you know, now that we're seeing some more activity and some more potential development, you will probably have some more discussions.
I don't wanna waste time, but years and years, I'm probably 15 years ago, back in the day of Gary and whatnot, wasn't there a design where at one point we're gonna turn that into kind of what Steve was saying with the retail and the
With your
housing,
last-
a bridge over the pond and all that, like,
So with
had-
your last POCD, you had as a vision for the town center to create a village district. And then we went ahead and did that. So we actually put a village district overlay, which is what we call a town center core and the town center north, are 2 different village districts, which
Yep.
give you a lot of authority by statute of design control and things like that. So We did put all that zoning in place, and it has been in place for a long time, with the option of developing on the underlying zone, which is basically restricted commercial, what you see out there, Stop and Shop and whatever. Or if you take advantage of the overlay, you could really intensify your zoning. You haven't had anybody take advantage of it yet, but it really is kind of a redevelopment kind of idea, right, for our town center, because you're gonna have to see buildings come down to redevelop in this fashion, so.
That's kind of what,
And so it's in your regulations currently, you have, if you look at the, overlay zone for town center, we don't have anything to show what it looks like, but I think you have a lot of good ideas and concepts in the regulations, but there may be some tweaks, like the developer talked about wanting to, now they're looking at it seriously, trying to make a project work. Now's the time to figure out what we need. But just so you understand, the premise of the town center overlay zone is a residential and commercial mixed-use zone. So when people say to me, you don't allow housing anywhere, that's not true. We allow it in our town center under the mixed-use criteria that you have. So that's where, that's where we said we wanted mixed-use housing, right? We wrote regulations for it. So we can't be surprised if we see applications come in for it. But again, you're not gonna see thousands of units because you don't have the land for it. We're talking hundreds of units, not thousands, so.
I just remembered somebody came in, it was, was that the vision, like down in Maryland, they have these, like a courtyard in the middle, they have the retail down below, and above they have the nice apartments.
Kind of what they did up at stores, I mean, that whole
Exactly,
concept.
it's the
yeah.
same, it's the same
kind of
thing as
thing.
what they did up at UConn.
Yeah, and to
Columbia,
try to do
Reston,
interconnections.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
Yeah, look at your zoning regulations, you have some good concepts in
We
it.
did see like a drawing.
Yeah, we have some diagrams and things, yeah.
So, we have a consultant recommendation. Are we comfortable with that?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
Okay.
that's it.
That's the only one with the red line.
Okay. So, we've gone through the whole thing. Are there any other comments that you would like to address in here? Did you give us a motion for?
No, just because I wasn't sure what you're gonna do, the only thing I would suggest is that, you make it effective, and for Pat to make all these changes, it'll probably take a week, so I would make it effective a week from Sunday, which would be the
21st.
21st. And that way we'll publish a legal notice to that effect. He'll have the changes made, so we'll actually have a document, all completely prepared. And the motion would be based on all the changes that we've discussed tonight and agreed to.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion regarding the whole plan of conservation and development?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2024 Plan of Conservation Development. It would be effective July 21st, 2024, and incorporate all the changes that we agreed upon this evening.
I second.
We have a second from Commissioner Bernstein.
It's me.
That's why I used your name in vain or whatever. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Congratulations.
Michelle, good job, you guys.
Nice job.
Good job.
So,
My fourth and last
Oh,
one.
yes, 5 more.
like an hour and 20 minutes.
Well, I've got the most.
Not bad for a 10-year plan, right?
Yeah.
All right, now I gotta dump some paper here.
Steve, I don't see anybody here for the first 3 applications, so representing the Shepherds, but I see here for the last 2, so maybe we should take them out of order.
Okay,
Nothing else,
with
just
everyone
out of courtesy
consent, we'll take,
Them showing up.
Maybe they're
so
upstairs.
talking about 2419 and 2421?
Yes, if we wanna do those first, because they're in the audience here.
All right, so, we're not gonna take up, with everyone's consent, take up application 2419P, the Golden Lamps, and temporary conditional.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For the record. So, but, just come up and just.
Does Peter do it?
Whoever wants to do it, let's go. I have my little report, but someone should make a little
Okay, on behalf of
presentation.
the Golden Lampstand Association, just request an extension or reapproval of the temporary conditional permit. They've installed driveway, some limited parking, that's pretty much a sign. That's pretty much what we have out there now. The things that haven't been built is a small gazebo and garden shed. Those are the only things I think that pretty much sums it up. And they do use it periodically. For their annual meeting, they walked over from Truth Baptist Church, I was there. And they use it other times during the course of a month, more limited number of people.
So do we have any, is that it for you?
Yeah.
Any comments from Director of Planning?
No, just reiterate, it is not heavily utilized, just there have been some minor improvements, so they still have some things like the gazebo, the porta potty to come in and get permits for when they wanna do that kind of stuff. So we don't have any concerns at this time, and we just ask them to keep us in mind when they go to do further work on the site.
Okay,
The backside has a,
any comments from commissioners or questions?
Entertain a motion.
About a motion?
Move to approve application 24-19P, the Golden Lampstand PNC. This is a request for renewal of a 2-year temporary and conditional permit to establish a small parking area with gazebo for periodic church gatherings. Property located at 401 King Street, R&R zone. Do you want me to read the first 3 points?
Yep.
Oh, the same.
Expiration.
Okay, sure. Point 1, the temporary and conditional permit will expire on July 9th, 2026. It must be renewed prior to that time if the use is to continue. Point 2, all freestanding signs and or building signs, temporary and permanent, require the issuance of a sign permit before they are erected. And point 3, if there are building structures, signs, or other items that require a building permit or other town approvals and permits, all such approvals or permits must be obtained prior to construction or use of the site.
A second.
Okay, have a motion and a second, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, now we move on to application 2421P. 6 West Avenue LLC.
did you provide us with this? No?
Where we uploaded the plans, like, you.
Oh, I mean, I can go out to our website, but I don't have them unless you provide me.
We have them in our package.
You have,
but-
yeah, I gave
I
them
can grab
copy.
a large one in the car, but,
That-
but
that's all right.
I think this might be okay.
Yeah, if you want us to upload them, we get them in there. I'll just give you, I have 2 of the larger ones, we probably can use them.
Which are these?
Those are for you to sign separate.
Okay.
That's it, my large one. This is, what you have, a big is what you have.
Anybody want to see this?
We have this, right?
We have it in
This is
our,
the big version.
I gave them 11 by 17.
I'm old, but I'm not that old.
That's what
You
got
also
it.
saw it before.
Thank you.
okay, so this is what we have in a smaller printout.
Yeah, the second
Just
sheet.
got the zoning tables for the butters. Okay. Anybody else wanna see this big one?
No.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Margaret Schmidt. I'm here from Design Professionals LLC, or Inc. And I'm a project manager and licensed landscape architect. I'm here on behalf of 6 West Avenue. In March 15th, 2022, we had a site plan approval with modifications for a hybrid cannabis retail establishment at 75 John Fitch Boulevard. And that included an off-site parking lot for 20 cars proposed at 45 John Fitch Boulevard. The final plans were not submitted at that time. In August 13th of 2022, unrelated, there was a text amendment that added fast food small definition, the use which changed how the parking had been calculated at the original approval. The takeout restaurant at 69 John Fitch was previously calculated at 1 space per 50 square feet of GFA, making the total required parking for 73 John Fitch with the entire shopping building to be 57 spaces, and we only had 48 existing. That required 9 additional spaces, and they went ahead and made 20 additional spaces at 45 John Fitch that required drainage, lighting, sidewalks, crosswalks. But with this new text amendment change, fast food small, the restaurant at 69 John Fitch Boulevard checks all the criteria for fast food small. So now we can calculate the parking at 1 space per 200 square feet of GFA, making the total required parking for 73 John Fitch Boulevard to be 43, and we have 48 existing. And that's why we're here now.
Okay. Any comments from our Director of Planning?
Yeah, so just for, I don't know how many remember the history of this property, but this became a hybrid facility before we adopted any regulations related to cannabis regulations. So it was initially a medicinal spot, and has been for many years. There is no change in square footage or anything from what was there originally and what the hybrid that was proposed at. There is a sidewalk along the side of the building coming up to it. The only real concern or thing we'd like them to do is add some additional signage, just to make sure that people coming down the side there are aware that there could be customers walking up on the side there. But there is, you know, when you look at historically this site, the parking that you see out there has been there forever in striped from the early 70s, I think it is.
Got my shoes here, to Kenny's shoe store.
Kenny's shoes
so
on
just let you
So
know.
it has always had historic retail uses out there, and with the recalculation of the fast food Chinese, we did change that, if you recall, for Subways and kinds of businesses like that. So it is gonna be incumbent on the owner of the property to monitor his parking situation, and as uses leave and come, you can't overtax your parking requirements, but in this situation, it works out that they're able to accommodate by existing parking, so it becomes a permitted as of right use, because we had already had it established. If he wasn't taking advantage of this is why it's a modification to what you had recently approved, someone would have to start brand new, and then they'd be coming in under your regulations as they're written today. So this is taking advantage of the approval that was granted prior to that.
Okay, but that original approval, way down at the southern end of the property, they were gonna add more parking, which was very awkward for servicing the
Yeah, it was. It
hybrid
was just
facility.
really
It was just meeting the regulation
way to
without
fix
helping
it, yeah.
anybody, right? Okay.
Yeah, it really was not an ideal solution for sure. This seems to be able to meet their needs. And the owner of the business is in the audience here, if you have any specific questions for him. And I think you do have other facilities, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm sorry.
Do you have other facilities that you
Yeah,
can
East
speak to?
Hartford.
If anybody wanted to know anything more about the business, you
Could
could
he
ask.
Just
identify
introduce
himself?
yourself, just.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Hello, everyone. Andrew Simino, the principal of 6 West Ave LLC. We have 3 retail licenses for, to sell cannabis. The hybrid one, which fits well at this site, would be both medical and adult use. And yeah, so our other sites would be in East Hartford and Cromwell. I'm happy to answer any questions or explain a little bit about the business. I would say though that previously, the way the business ran, these businesses ran in Connecticut, it was a little bit different. There was a lot more staff on site. There was a lot more heavy flow because there was less of them. Across the state, there was only 18 going back 2 years ago. Now we're almost up to we're approaching like 40. There'll end up being about 60 dispensaries across the state or retail cannabis sites. So now the number of people using one has reduced a lot. So the parking requirements have come down, and also that inrush that we were all concerned about in the beginning has dissipated, and sort of become just like a regular, like a package store or something like that. People are in and out of it within 5 minutes. So
Right, and I would I think it's true that our regulations only allow hybrid.
That's correct. We only allow hybrid facility. Yep.
Any questions or comments from members of the commission?
Only comment, I was super worried about Curaleaf moving in Manchester. I expected it to be just piles of traffic. Every time I drive by, there's like 3 cars in the parking lot. But they're obviously, they're doing well. It's just, to your point, it's, when it's hybrid, it's a little bit, you have the retail customer that's just in and out.
Yeah.
Versus that was all medicinal before, and people were in there for a while.
Consultation.
Consultation.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's a no-brainer.
Okay.
Good.
Anybody like to make a motion?
Motion to approve application 24-21P, 6 West Ave LLC. This is number 1, the building street number must be included on the final plan. Pavement markings must be maintained in good condition throughout the site drives and parking areas. All freestanding signs and/or building signs require the issuance of a sign permit before they are erected. And number 4, additional signage along the access drive should be placed for safety and to alert drivers of pedestrians.
Do we have a second?
Second.
From Commissioner Viteri. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, now, Michelle, is it okay to go ahead with these others, or should we
I
wait?
mean, I would be happy to present them if you want me to. I mean, I know they moved around, they came and got their signs, I'm just not quite sure why no one's here tonight. Whatever your pleasure is.
These are pretty minor things, so why don't we go ahead?
Yeah, okay, so starting with the first one, this is 2019 Bradford Boulevard. It's an industrial zone that has a single-family house on it that historically had an office and then was made into a 2-family. It's a situation where zoning doesn't really have any solutions for it as a 2-family in an industrial zone, thus the temporary conditional permit. We did have a little lapse of the permit when they were going through some blight and zoning violations that have related to the back of the property. Those have been resolved, so we're back having them come into the temporary conditional permit to keep this legal, the 2-family, that I believe they have 2 tenants in the building. So, again, that's kind of the old history of the property.
Okay.
Goes back a long time.
So is this like a duplex then, if it's a
Well,
two-family
it's
home?
a house that they put an addition on for an office that they converted into living space, so duplex is probably stretching it, more like an accessory apartment that's oversized.
Okay.
You know, and again, we don't have accessory apartments in the industrial zone, so there's really no zoning solution other
Yeah.
than a variance, and I hate to really encourage that.
I just wanna ask, in terms of affordable housing, neither of these units count towards 830G, is
No,
that
they do
correct?
not. They do not.
Okay, no, I was just curious.
Any other comments or discussion?
No.
We want to make a motion?
Move to approve application 24-16P, J.E. Shepherd Company, renewal of a 2-family house in the industrial zone. 2-year temporary and conditional permit for this apartment will expire on July 1st, 2026.
Okay,
Okay, then.
second?
Second.
So, yeah.
Did anybody say?
Second.
Oh, okay, thank you. And any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Number 2417.
So this here again is a Shepherd property. It's a very old property on Windsorville Road that had some Quonset huts on it. So there's like 5 houses on it of various types. And then the building where you see the 82, there's actually like a old warehouse building that has 2 apartments in it. I know when I first came to town in the late 80s, I got a sailfish sale from that location. There used to be a sailcloth business in there. So it's had a range of uses over the years, but back in, a long time ago, when zoning board of appeals used to do temporary and conditional permits, they approved 2 apartments there. So this is one of these ones that goes back many years, having had approvals. I did verify with the assessor that they're aware of them. They do have them on the land records and whatnot. And the health officer does require an annual testing of, there is a well that services many units on that property. So again, these are going back to 1993, that these two houses, or two apartments exist in this manufacturing type business.
All right, any questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, do we have a motion?
Make a motion, accept application 24-17P, J. Shepherd Company.
Applicant, what?
Second.
You got it? There we go, hold on.
Where's that?
Project J. Shepherd, two-family apartment, 176 Winslow Road, application number 24-17P. The applicant must work and test the water annually to provide the results to the town environmental health officer. The permit is for a 2-year renewal and will expire July 9th, 2026. If this is to be continued beyond that date, renewal will be required.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Okay.
On to number 2418P.
So the last one is over in the old post office on Main Street, at 865 Main Street. There is a small office called the Inspiration House Publishers that I believe Sue Shepherd has operated on and off there since 1974. So that's how old this one is. And I can always remember Tim coming in every 2 years and telling us that he likes it as a temporary and conditional permit, because then the public can decide whether they want it to continue or not by putting a sign out every 2 years. So we've never had any negative comments on it. They've been faithful, keeping it active. There's a very low level of activity, I'm sure even less today, but there is some parking right out in front. So it's kind of an old Main Street use that, you know, just continues on.
And for those of you that don't know, it's the oldest continuous running post office in the United States of America.
That's
It's historic.
Okay, so, any comments or questions from commissioners?
No.
Do we have a motion?
I move for approval of application 24-18P, Post Office Publishers House. The permit is for a 2-year renewal and will expire on July 1st, 2026.
July 9 or?
It should be July 9th, I believe,
July 9th, yeah, I'm sorry.
2026. If this use is to continue beyond that date, a renewal will be required.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. Any bonds?
No bonds.
No bonds.
Any old business?
No, I did give you 2 applications to be received in front of you, 2 subdivisions. The one thing I'm gonna ask everybody to take is this is for 2 weeks from now when you have your public hearing on the Down East application. So here is the text language that they're proposing, some supportive language that they provided, and then I made you all a chart. And it's a chart where I try to take some of our existing zones being design commercial, what they're proposing, Buckland Road, Town Center North, Sullivan Ave overlay, and multifamily. So any zone we allow multifamily in. And I took some different things out of the regulations to give you a point of comparison. I think it's really hard, this regulation's really thick, it's hard to know what you're really talking about. So this at least kind of gives you somewhere, if you know what Buckland Road looks like, you can see how it compares with it, with certain aspects. And I got into things like density, types of units that we're allowing, and I got into affordability requirement. So again, so you have a point of comparison, what we're doing in different zones. And then lastly, a kind of a current status. So for example, we have nothing under the overlay zone, we have nothing under Sullivan Ave built, so. Just informational, hopefully it's helpful in trying to at least see the regulations. So I'm gonna give you all this, and then next week with your packets, you'll get the report, and we have some other department information coming from other people, so expect more information, but I thought this would be good just to get you started,
Am I
so.
taking one pass?
Everybody's
around?
taking one and passing one, yeah.
Michelle, will there be
The whole
that,
packet.
Yeah, the whole packet.
All right.
will there be any other
2 weeks, right?
historical information on what they had, we talked about before, that they had applied for, that, the original plans?
He keeps saying next week.
You know,
Or do I just need to go online and look?
you can look there, and again, I think if you have something, when it comes time for the hearing, that you want information, just request it during the public hearing, and we can get any background information you want for it, so. Yeah, you can look at it yourself where I told you to look, but, yeah, you can also, during the public hearing, you know, look for additional information to come back to you or whatever, be glad to.
I'm calling you when I get lost on the website.
There you go.
So, any other business here?
No, that's really all I had, thank you.
So, I'm kicking myself because I didn't take the opportunity to thank our consultants for the great job they did for us on the plan of conservation development. Could you draft a letter for me to sign?
I'd be glad to do
On
that.
behalf of the whole commission, just thanking them for their huge effort and fine work. Any other business correspondence reports?
There is one other thing, I'm sorry, we got, the Connecticut Chapter American Planning Association is gonna be sponsoring an all-day housing charrette, in September. And they're trying to get one member from a planning and zoning commission and the planner from communities to go down and, you know, talk about affordable housing and how we can bring affordable housing in communities. So there was a letter that I think I forwarded to you, seeing if somebody on the commission was interested in signing up for it. Someone from my office will definitely be going with, if there's a commissioner interested, it's an all-day event.
Is it weekend or weekday?
Give it to you in just 1 second.
Kevin just
It's gonna be
raised
on
his hand.
Wednesday,
Yeah.
September 11th, from 8:30 to 4:30, so it's an all-day in New Haven.
On 9/11.
On a Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Wednesday.
Yeah,
When you say all day, when does it end?
4:30.
4:30.
You can leave a little early.
Well, no, I'm thinking of the Hartford line. I mean, I'd be interested.
Okay, I mean, I'd be glad to send this out.
Yeah.
When you take it. Here, once you take this, I have an extra copy of it.
Something else now.
Beautiful.
He's retired now.
Oh,
So did you also indicate?
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
I can make that.
So you let me know what you think, if you,
Yeah.
if it fits in your schedule and we can
Picture and
sign
pass it
people up.
down.
Okay.
That's it.
Under new business, old business?
Run whatever.
Well, I just think we ought to, make, just like everybody know, we have one meeting in August, and it's not the second or fourth Tuesday, it's the third.
August 20th is
August
the only meeting
20th.
we have in August.
I was kind of
Set down the
put, surprised by that, so,
A little trickitation.
yeah. I mean,
Okay, guess we'll welcome a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any